So, hello. My name is Suhaila Booker. I am a Senior Assistant Director of Admissions here at UMass Amherst. And today we are going to give you some admissions into the first year admissions application process and into the University of Massachusetts itself. So thank you so much for joining us today. The sun has come out, it's a gorgeous day. If you haven't already been on a tour, I definitely recommend it. But after this, you will be able to eat in our dining halls today at a discounted rate. We do have the #1 campus dining in the nation for the 7th year in a row. If you haven't heard us brag about that, you will hear us brag about it. But definitely recommend that you go ahead and eat in the dining halls after the session is over today. So, to begin, going on its own. So to begin, we are going to go over what is new at UMass Amherst. All right, so what is new at the University of Massachusetts Amherst? So we are among the top 15% public universities nationally. We have the #1 campus dining for now the 7th year in a row. And so, like I said, we like to brag about that a lot, but I think it's important to note that we do have a lot of options for our students. If you are vegan, vegetarian, gluten-free, kosher, any kind of dietary needs you have, we can support. We also have a bunch of different options to support the different cultures that you're coming from. If you go into our dining halls, you'll find a lot of different areas, a lot of different foods that you'll be able to choose from. We have 4 different dining halls spread out around our campus. In our campus center, we have the blue wall, which is sort of like a food court. And then we also have several cafes just spread out throughout the entire campus. Nearly every building has some kind of cafe or eatery where you can grab a coffee, you can get some sushi, you can get some breakfast sandwiches, we have to-go options. So for students that are on their way to class, we have like hot lines for them to grab like pancakes and eggs and bacon or whatever they want on their way to class, and they can get it in a to-go container. So we have tons of options. And then one of our favorite traditions coming up soon for Halloween every year, we do give our students steak and lobster. Not entirely sure where that tradition comes from or what steak and lobster have to do with Halloween, but it is a tradition that our students very much look forward to, and one of their favorite pastimes is seeing how many lobsters they can get. One of the students that I know got 4 last year, this is her last year, so 5 is the goal for this year. So, other than that, other than the food, we are in the top 20 coolest schools, so that means we do have a commitment to sustainability on our campus, and it's a constant commitment. We're constantly working toward being better in that area. We are in the top 30 LGBTQ+ friendly universities, and we have 12 faculty among the world's most cited researchers. So all of our faculty, the majority of our faculty anyway, are experts in their field, but they're really coming from all over the place. They have ranges of experiences, and they're working with our students not just in their classes, not just as their professors, but they're also working with them directly. They are working with them, students are supporting to conduct research, so you really have a sense of community and a really large range of expertise coming from our faculty members. Now, in terms of what we are investing into our community, so we've invested about $2 billion into our campus at this point. That includes our Worcester Dining Commons. So if you haven't eaten on campus yet today, I definitely recommend going to check out our Worcester Dining Commons. It was just completed in like 2021, and it's a very, very nice space. Definitely one of the more popular places our students go to. But all of our students, if you ask them, will say that they have a specific dining hall that is their favorite. They all serve the same thing. But students will swear by one of the dining halls on campus and claim that it is their favorite. Worcester is one of the newer spaces on campus. South College is a beautiful space that combines our older architecture with the newer spaces that we've added to campus and added to that building. So you can see in the South College area, we still have like a brick building in there with some skylights. It's really gorgeous in there. We also have the north residential area, the living area for our students. So we do have some newer spaces in terms of living areas. And then the Oliver Design Building, if you're a student interested in like studio art, architecture, you'll probably spend a lot of time in that building. The student union, they're all in the student union right now. The student union was completed a few years ago, so we have this beautiful geared toward our students. And then the physical science building, which is actually right next door. You can see it out of the window. So all of these different spaces on campus are relatively new areas, and we are constantly building, constantly investing in our campus. One of the newer spaces that we're investing in now is our computer science building. So it's about $125 million investment, and it's going to be around 90,000 plus square feet. So we are opening this hopefully in 2025. Now our computer science program is one of our more popular programs, and we're very, very excited to be able to provide more resources for our students, more spaces. We're also going to be recruiting more faculty because it's become such a popular program. We're glad that we can invest a decent amount of money in it and admit more students to such a popular program. Another newer space on campus is an undergraduate housing area. It opened in fall of 2023. You probably passed it on your way into campus. It's on Massachusetts Avenue. We have about 600 new beds and apartment-style housing. So that's a really, really nice space for our students. There are also some communal spaces there. So there's a rock climbing wall. There's places for students to get food and coffee. So it's a nice community space for all of our students, but we definitely are happy that our students have a space to live in apartment-style housing and be able to connect with their peers in a more comfortable kind of environment. Now, onto who makes up the UMass Amherst community. So we are a large community, and what you'll hear from our current students, from our tour guides especially, is that you find your smaller communities within this larger one. So we have just over 23,000 undergraduate students. Total enrollment is over 32,000 students, and that includes our graduate students. Now, our students are represented by all 50 states, so very diverse community. About 33% of our students identify as students of color, 22% identify as the first in their family to go to college or first-generation college students. 100% of first-year students live on our campus, so you are guaranteed housing as an incoming first-year student or as a transfer student. So just make sure all of you know that. We have a lot of different living areas to choose from. And we have over 400 registered student organizations. And so I would really challenge you not to find a student organization that resonates with you. We have clubs that are related to your academics. We have clubs that are related to identity. We have clubs that are related to the arts, related to event planning. We have super random clubs. Has anybody heard of the Lettuce Club? Show of hands, a couple of people. Okay, so for those of you who haven't heard of the Lettuce Club, it's a club where they get together, I think it's once a semester or once a year, and they each eat a head of lettuce, and then whoever finishes it first is the head of the Lettuce Club. And that's it. That's all they do. And the super fun thing about college is that you can do random stuff like that, and no one's going to judge you because you're in college, and that's a really fun thing you can do in college. So I would, like I said, challenge you not to find a club that you connect with, that resonates with you. They vary a lot. To very prominent clubs to super random clubs that who thought of those ideas, right? So that's just a little bit about who makes up the UMass Amherst community. Now, on to sort of after UMass, the success after UMass, because that's what's also important. We want your time here to be valuable, and we want it to set you up well for whatever you do after you leave the university. So, in terms of graduation success, 90% of our recent graduating class had favorable outcomes. So that means that they were either placed at a job or in a graduate program after graduating UMass Amherst. 90% of them did have favorable outcomes. And part of the way that we're connecting our students with these opportunities after they graduate is through our alumni network. So if you raise your hand if you're a UMass Amherst alum. Yay, thanks for coming back today. Does the campus look any different from when you were here? Yeah, a little bit. So thankfully we have this very large network of UMass Amherst alums, and they are connecting our students with internship and job opportunities as current students and all of these things that they do after they graduate. So really our students end up being very successful after they leave our university. We have around a 90% retention rate, which means the students who start in their first year do come back after their first year. This is one of the highest rates at a public university. We're very proud of the fact that our students who come here often want to stay here. And so, it's very important for us to make sure that students have a wonderful first year experience, and that's what that retention is. The retention rate is that we retain our first year students and they come back for the rest of their years. And then almost 80% of our students do graduate in 4 years. And I want to add, again, this is a significantly high rate of students who are graduating in 4 years. And this doesn't include our students who are participating in our 4+1 programs, which are 4 years of undergraduate and 1 year of graduate programs. So they might be graduating in 5 years. But there are different paths that our students are taking, with most of them graduating in 4 years. Now, I'm going to shift onto the application process. Most of you, or some of you rather, may have already completed this process. Some of you may have just started this process. Some of you maybe are thinking about beginning this process, but maybe haven't done it yet. Some of you maybe are not in your senior year and are getting started early and just are trying to get all the information. So if you have questions, I'm going to save questions till the end, but feel free to write those questions down, keep them in your mind as we're going over the application process. Now, this is the application timeline. So definitely important to keep all of these dates in mind and these months in mind as we're going through the application process, especially for all of our seniors in the room. Now, August 1st is when the common application opens. So UMass Amherst is on the common application. That is how you're going to apply to our university. So, you're welcome to be submitting application materials now, but if you're waiting to apply for a different deadline, that's okay if you haven't, but it's open, ready for you to submit materials. November 5th is our early action deadline. So early action means that you apply earlier, you find out earlier, you have more time to make your decision. I also suggest that if you're interested in our competitive programs, that you apply early action. So those are nursing, computer science, business, and engineering. Those are our competitive programs. And if you're interested in them, we definitely recommend that you apply early action, because we do admit most students to the competitive programs in the early action pool. Now, December is when you're going to fill out the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. So if you're applying for financial aid, you will need to fill out the free application for federal student aid. Some schools also require the CSS profile. UMass Amherst does not. We only require the FAFSA. This year, it's not opening until the end of December. Typically, it would open on October 1st. The FAFSA now isn't opening until the end of December, and that is because the federal government is revamping the FAFSA for everyone. My understanding is that they're trying to make it easier for folks to fill it out. So technically, I'm going to skip one date and say that the priority deadline for FAFSA is typically March 1st, but we're going to be flexible with folks. We realize that they are pushing back that opening of the FAFSA very significantly, so we're going to be as flexible as we can with you, just getting it when you can. January 15th is the regular decision deadline. So regular decision is a perfectly fine round to apply for. The benefit of regular decision for most students is we get to see their first semester senior year grades. So let's say, for example, maybe you struggled a bit in your first year or in your freshman year, and then sophomore year got a little bit better. Junior year, you're taking some honors classes, maybe like an AP class, and your grades are getting really good. And then senior year, you're really hitting your stride, you're doing a very good job, and you want us to see that growth. You should wait to apply for the regular decision deadline so that we can see your first semester senior year grades. So definitely get some coaching from your high school counselors, from admissions counselors like myself, to see the best date to apply. But we do have 2 application deadlines. Early action students will hear from us in January, around the end of January. Regular decision students will hear from us around the end of March. Finally, May 1st is the National Candidate Reply deadline. So that means that's when you have to let us and every other college and university in the country know whether or not you're going to be attending their school. So even if you apply early action, you still have until May 1st to make that decision. But everybody has to let us know by that date. After May 1st, even if you've been admitted, and you don't let us know and submit your enrollment deposit, we can't guarantee the spot. So you want to make sure that you make your decision, submit your enrollment deposit by that May 1st deadline. Right, so that's our application timeline. Now, early action, I already talked about this briefly, but just to go into who should apply early action versus who should apply regular decision. First, I want to emphasize that UMass Amherst does not have an early decision deadline. So for those who don't know, early decision is a binding decision. It's a binding round to apply for, and you can only apply to one school early decision. If you do, you're making a commitment, you're signing a contract saying, I will go to that school if I get in, and withdrawing your application from other schools. The benefit of early decision for schools that offer it is that you typically have a higher chance of getting into that school if it is your top choice. All of that said, we don't have early decision. For early action, again, the deadline to apply for it is November 5th. It's coming up very soon. It's going to sneak up on you, so get those applications in as soon as possible. Decision releases will happen in January. And in terms of who should apply, folks who are interested in our competitive majors, again, that is nursing, computer science, business, and engineering, and students applying to talent-based majors. So if you're interested in our music, dance, art, or architecture programs, where you'll have to submit either an audition or a portfolio, it's best for you to apply early action. In terms of regular decision, January 15th is the regular decision deadline. Decision releases will happen in March, and folks who should apply are students who need more time to complete their application. You'll want to make sure that your application is to your satisfaction, so if you need more time, apply regular decision. And students who benefit from senior year grades included in holistic review, because we do review holistically, and I will explain what that means for us in a little bit. But if you want us to take into consideration, again, those first semester senior year grades, you should wait to apply with regular decision. Now, these are all of the materials that we require of you. So these are all of the things that you need to submit to us in order for your application to be considered complete. The first thing is the common application. Now, that's like you have to submit the common application. There's no other way to apply for a university. So on the common application, we want to see your extracurricular activities and your personal essay. Now, in terms of extracurricular activities, just make sure you're putting anything that you're involved in outside of the classroom. Some people don't think to put their jobs that they're getting paid for, or family responsibilities, taking care of siblings. Those are absolutely extracurricular activities. You should put them down, and in fact, they are wonderful extracurricular activities because they show us a sense of leadership and responsibility that we love to see in our applicants. So make sure you're putting those things down there when you're writing down your extracurriculars. And then we also want to see your personal essay. So your personal essay, you're probably going to have to submit this to a good portion of the schools that you're applying to. And in this essay, we want to learn something about you. It's important for us to have learned something about you after reading this personal essay. So make sure that your voice is coming out as you're writing this and that we are learning something about you after reading it. Then we have some UMass specific questions that are required. They are 100 words max. They're short answer questions, they're not essays. Those questions are, why do you want to attend UMass Amherst? Why did you choose the majors that you did? And explain how, as a product of your community or group, you would enrich our campus. Now, as you're answering these questions, I just recommend looking over them before you fill them out, rather before you submit the application. Make sure you look it over. Because these are pretty standard questions, especially why do you want to attend UMass Amherst? Most schools are going to ask you why you want to go to the school that you're applying to. Why do you want to come to our school? I can't tell you how many times I've read the answer to that question, and someone says, I really want to go to the University of New Hampshire because it's a really beautiful school, and I love the area, and I can't wait to go there. And I'm like, that's great, but that's not our school. So just make sure as you're looking it over, if you're copying and pasting the answers, that we don't know about it. Then, your official high school transcript. So when we say official, that means it has to come from your high school. So it can't come from the student or from the parent or anybody. It has to come from a high school counselor or teacher or something like that. They will send us your high school transcript. Now, keep in mind that we do recalculate every single student's GPA. So it's a recalculated weighted GPA, which means we are taking into consideration any honors, AP, IB, dual enrollment classes that you're involved in, and we will give extra weight to your GPA if you're taking those classes. If your school doesn't offer those classes, don't worry. We are looking at you within the context of your school. We get a school report in addition to your transcript, which means we'll see what your school offers, and we're not comparing you to a student who had those opportunities if you didn't. All right, so just keep that in mind that we are recalculating your GPA. Finally, one academic letter of recommendation. So that means it's coming from a high school counselor or from one of your teachers. You're welcome to submit up to 3. I wouldn't suggest any more than that, but you know, 1 is fine. One is fine. We're totally fine with 1. And the reason I'm saying that the way that I'm saying it is because we receive over 50,000 applications a year. So the more that you're sending, the more that we have to read. I had a student send me 13 letters of recommendation once. Don't do that. I mean, if you have 13 people who can say 13 completely, entirely different things about you, then go ahead and submit those 13 letters of recommendation. But if someone's just sort of saying the same thing about you 13 times, it kind of gets redundant for us. So 1, perfectly fine, it's all we require. Welcome to submit up to 3. So those are all of the required materials, everything that you need for your application to be considered complete. Keep in mind that for the Commonwealth Honors College, we do consider every single applicant. So there's no application process for our honors program. Everybody is automatically considered for it. And you do have to apply into a major. We do require that you apply into a major, but you're not bound to that major necessarily. You do have the option of changing your major. We make it very simple for students to change their major outside of the competitive ones: nursing, computer science, business, and engineering. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. So in addition to that primary major that you put down, you have the option of putting an alternative major. And so I'll talk more about what that looks like as well. But those are all of the things that you have are required to submit for your application to be considered complete. Now, in terms of what you don't have to submit, UMass Amherst is test optional, so you do not have to submit your test scores if you don't want to. If you want to, we will accept the SATs or ACTs. If you submit your scores, we're going to consider them in the holistic review process, and that means that we're thoughtfully considering every use of your application. Everything that you send to us is going to help us make the best decision about whether or not you're going to thrive academically and be a good addition to our campus community. So we're going to take the test scores into consideration in terms of that. A lot of people ask, do you have a higher chance of getting in just for submitting your test scores, no matter what the score is? And the answer is no. We're not going to let you in just because you submitted your test scores. We're going to look at them in the context of everything else you sent us. All right, so if you got like a 16, if you got a perfect SAT, but you're like failing classes but happened to do a really good job on the SATs, then you're probably not getting in, right? We're looking at all of it because we want to make sure that you're doing well in your classes also. On the other end, if you get a really poor SAT score, but you're getting perfect grades in classes, we're going to say, okay, maybe the SAT was really stressful for them, or maybe they're really a bad test taker, but they're obviously done well all 4 years in high school. That's going to make a bigger difference for us. So we're looking at all of it. You can see sort of how we're thinking about all of the things that we're reading in your application. We're not just taking one thing and making a decision. We're looking at all of it. In terms of what it looks like, people always ask, like, who submitted test scores? Is it a good idea to submit my test scores? When is it a good idea to submit my test scores? To give you an overall update, the majority of both applicants and students who were admitted to the university did not submit their test scores. The majority of students who were awarded merit scholarships did not submit their test scores. And the majority of students who were admitted or invited rather to the Commonwealth Honors College didn't submit test scores. If you're applying for a competitive major, you don't have to submit test scores. So I just want to give you a sense it's okay if you don't want to submit them, but you can if you'd like. Now, choosing a major. So like I said, you do have to choose a major, but we do also have the option of our exploratory tracks, which is our version of an undecided major. So instead of having one large undecided major, you would be on the exploratory track within the College of Natural Sciences. You take a lot of science classes, and then you'd be able to sort of figure out which one you want to pursue. We also have an interdisciplinary studies exploratory track if you think there's a lot of different things that you want to pursue or that you're interested in. We have that option as well. So, like I said, you have two options, your intended major, which is required, and then an alternative major, which is optional. So, if we're unable to offer you a place in your intended major, we may consider you for your alternative major, but it's not common that we do that. It's not likely that we're going to consider you for that alternative major, but we do give students the option because sometimes it does apply to students who maybe don't qualify for more competitive majors, but we would be good at other programs that we have. Now, switching into the Eisenberg School of Management. So first of all, before I say anything about Eisenberg, I do want to say that our nursing program is a program that you cannot transfer into at all at any point in time. The Eisenberg School of, and that's always been the case for nursing. The Eisenberg School of Management, this is a more recent development as of a couple of years ago, where you also can't, you can't transfer into the Eisenberg School of Management. So students starting in their first year, entering in fall 2022, everybody after that can't transfer into the Eisenberg School of Management. Now, there's an exception to that with hospitality and tourism management, but the only option that you can sort of take on as if you're not part of the business program is the business minor. So when you're applying, I just want you to be aware that if you're interested in business, there's no option for you to transfer in later. So some students think they can start off as an economics major and then just transfer into like the finance major in the Eisenberg School of Management. That's not the case. Now, we do have a session later on today at 1 p.m. that says beyond, it's about choosing something that's in the sort of business realm so that you can exercise options outside of our Eisenberg School of Management if it's something that you're interested in. So we'll give you some other options later on, but as you're applying, I want you to think about this because it's going to be important in the application process. Now, the UMass questions. So this is going to give us some insight into like why you're interested in our university, why you want to be a part of our community, why you are interested in the majors specifically at our university, and a response is required for all of them. Like I mentioned, 100 words max, it's not, that much. But again, they are why do you want to attend UMass Amherst, why did you choose the majors that you did, and explain how as a touch of your community or group you would enrich our campus. Again, just look over the answers to these questions before you submit them to us. So, the application review process at UMass Amherst. How do we review your applications? So I said I would go over holistic review. It's an individualized process. We're looking through every piece of your application. So when I mentioned before, students maybe started off not doing so well, but as things got more difficult, they did better. We're not just looking at your GPA. We're not just seeing what your GPA is. We're looking at the story that your transcript tells, and we're looking at how everything else that you submit to us adds to that story to make, again, the best decision about whether or not you're going to thrive academically and be a good addition to our campus community. The factors we consider are academic achievement, activities and/or work experience, the essay and custom questions, so the writing pieces, the letter of recommendation, and supplemental materials for specific programs. And again, that's for students who are interested in talent-based programs, music, dance, arts, architecture. So for holistic review, we're just looking at all pieces of who you are, your people. So we're not just looking at you as numbers, we're looking at you as people, and that's how we're reviewing your applications, as you are, so who you are as a whole person. Now this is just a little bit of information, like a fall 2023 admissions update, so you can see where we were last year, because I will say that it was pretty different last year from the prior year. So we got more applications, things got a little bit more competitive, so I imagine this year that will follow suit. We'll probably get more applications, things might become more competitive. But just to give you a sense, we got just over 50,000 applications this past year. We admitted almost 29,000 students, and so our admission rate was 58%. The first year class students who enrolled at our university, 5,571, so 5,571 students started at our university this fall. So about 15% of our students are underrepresented students, and underrepresented students means like students of color. First generation students, about 19% of our students identify as first generation, and 8.7% of our students are international students. So that's just to give you a sense of what things looked like for us this past year. Those are all of the updates that I have for you. So we have 15 minutes now for any questions. So are there any questions about anything that I said about the application process review? So I'm going to do in the white shirt and then in the back there.
Early action. What percentage of students who apply are early action or are committed?
So the acceptance rate for early action and for regular decision is pretty much the same. It's about 50%, except for the competitive majors for nursing, computer science, business, and engineering. Those are a bit different. Now, for example, in the business program, we admitted almost 50% of students to the early action pool to our business program, whereas for early action, it was about 25% of students that we admitted. And then we had a question in the back here.
Yeah, I was going to ask about Eisenberg acceptance data. So that 50% was for early action. What was it generally for Eisenberg?
For Eisenberg, so for Eisenberg, the overall acceptance rate, it was around 45%. Maybe 44%, probably closer to 40. But in it varies from early action to regular. In early action, like I said, it's around 50%, and then in regular decision, it's about 25%. Any other questions? Yes.
So for early action, did you say that the first semester grades are not recognized?
Yes. So the question was for early action, first semester grades, are they recognized? And so the answer is no. And that might be different. It varies school to school because some schools work on either a trimester or quarter system. And if they do, then there's a chance that we're going to review those grades, and we might see them. But if you have just 2 semesters, the likelihood is that your senior year grades aren't coming in by that November 5th deadline. Some students do have their senior year grades come in before we review their application, but there's no guarantee of that because we can't hold off on reading someone's application until they get their grades. We just read them as we read them after the November. So if you don't have the certain materials in, certain grades in by that November 5th deadline, we can't guarantee that they're going to be reviewed. So students want us to see that, and they think, and it's always best to put your best foot forward academically. So if your senior year grades are going to increase your overall GPA and demonstrate harder work, higher level classes, it's better to wait to apply regular decision. Yes. Yeah, so the question was whether or not we accept internal transfers. Since we don't accept them for Eisenberg or nursing, is that the same for the other competitive majors? And so that's not the same. So the only schools that don't accept internal transfers are the nursing school and the Eisenberg School of Management. Now, the computer science program technically does accept internal transfers, but it's more competitive, as with engineering as well. There are certain prerequisites, there are certain classes that you have to take, like predictor courses that you have to take and get your grades in order to transfer into those programs, and it is, again, very competitive, so they have to limit the number of students they admit into them. But for computer science and engineering, there is a possibility of transferring them later. Yes?
Of course, who's graduating high school in another state that moves to Massachusetts immediately following high school graduation, what's the situation in terms of in-state or out-of-state tutor application?
Yeah, so the question is whether a student who is living out of state but moving in-state to Massachusetts right after high school graduation, what's the situation for in-state and out-of-state applications and for financial aid and for the in-state tuition. So in order to qualify for in-state tuition, you have to have lived in Massachusetts for at least a year prior to starting at the university so they wouldn't count as an in-state student, and they have to have a parent or guardian someone that they're living with who has a Massachusetts address. So that's what would qualify a student for the in-state tuition. For us, in terms of the application, it doesn't really matter if the student is in-state or out-of-state. We don't give preference to in-state or out-of-state students, but our student body and our application pool happens to be 70% in-state and 30% out-of-state. Yes, Becky?
I have a question about the early action again. You had mentioned before
programs, whether or not early action is a good option for medical majors, for folks interested in the medical field, whether it's a better option to apply early action, whether it's more popular. So in my opinion, my advice is that if you can apply early action, then you should apply early action. And that's just because you have more time to make your decision. So everybody has until May 1st to do their college visits, to make their decision, to figure out the best school for them. So I always suggest that the school has it, because it's also not binding. But for medical majors in particular, first of all, we have the pre-med, pre-law, pre-vet, all of those things tracks, as opposed to a pre-med major. So students would be, for example, a biology major on the pre-med track. So that's not technically considered a competitive program, and I would say we see the more students typically apply regular decisions than they do early action. And that's just because it's a later deadline. You know, it's typically, we see students submitting for the January 15th deadline. Most students apply in regular decisions. So I wouldn't say, like, the acceptance rate is the same, it's about 58% both times, except for the competitive majors, so it's fine either way. But it's always best if your senior year grades are going to help your GPA to wait and apply regular decision. Yes, Ms. Brown? Yeah, so the question was what we're looking for candidates that we're inviting to the Commonwealth Honors College. And so for the Commonwealth Honors College, academic excellence is going to be a big part of it. And so, like when we're reviewing an overall application, we're not just looking at the GPA, but we do want to see that a student is excelling in their academic classes. So if they have access to higher level classes, are they taking advantage of those classes? We also are looking for leadership in activities, and that's going to mean a lot of different things. If they're captains of club, if they're taking care of family members, if they have a job, all of those different things are going to play a factor. We also are looking for what they're talking about in their essay and how they're writing their essay more specifically. And so if we see a student that specifically is excelling in the writing of their essay, that's going to make, it's all of it, you know? And so, and then also like in the letters of recommendation, I think one of the things that we see, not very often, but that stand out for us is if a teacher says, this is the most amazing student that I've taught in my 30 years of teaching, you know. And so for the Commonwealth Honors College, they are more than anybody looking for those well-rounded students. That's who they want to be invited as incoming first-year students. Yes? So the question was, there's an option for the resume on the Common App, and what do we expect to see for the resume? So frankly, we don't really care much for the resume. I mean, if you want to put it on there, that's fine, and in fact, we're not going to hold it against you if you do, but it doesn't make a huge difference for us in the application process. Now, I think what I typically see on the resume that I don't see in other places is that a student will put their jobs that they're getting paid for on their resume, but they don't put it on their extracurricular activities. So we'll look it over, because we look over everything that you submit to us, but for us, we're not necessarily looking for anything in the resume. Anybody else have a question? Yes, back here, and then at the front.
How does the early versus regular affect merit?
So it doesn't affect it at all. Well, we give out the same amount of merit money in early action and in the regular decision pool. So I think that we get a fair amount of students coming from homeschooled or unschooled backgrounds. So I wouldn't say that there's necessarily anything we can do to help their application, because we try to make sure that they're on as level of playing field as our other applicants. But we have specific folks in our office that read and sort of translate our homeschooled and unschooled applications. Anything else before we wrap up? Good? Okay, well thank you all so much for having me, and I appreciate you joining me today. Definitely recommend go eating in the dining hall. Definitely think you should go see the Worcester Dining Commons, but up to you which dining hall you want to go to. If you have any questions after this, I'll hang out in the front, and we have tours going every hour on the hour, so there'll be another one starting at 1, but I hope you enjoy the rest of your fall visit day.